All right, Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. Check out Pig and a Pickle, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. And this video is also brought to you by Mancini's Sleep World. Mancini's is a proud sponsor of the Krug Show as well. They offer a 120-night guarantee with a range of brands and price points. With Mancini's, you get free next-day delivery. Click the link below or go to sleepworld.com and find a bed that works for you. Whether you shop online or visit in store, use the code KRUG10 and you'll get 10% off. That's KRUG10, K-R-U-E-G 10, and you'll get 10% off in any of Mancini's locations or online at sleepworld.com. All right, let's talk a little 49er football. Kind of an exciting story coming out of the Combine. Michael Lombardi, who's now doing personnel for the North Carolina Tar Heels under Bill Belichick, and a guy who's very connected in NFL circles, reported this week on Twitter that there's buzz around the Senior Bowl among the executives who were roaming the sidelines there in Mobile, that the Niners may be sleepers in the free agent pursuit of T. Higgins when he hits free agency on March the 12th. There are other teams as well, the Patriots, the Commanders, the Texans, the Chargers, but the Niners are mentioned there as well for T. Higgins, who played 12 games this year, 73 catches, 10 touchdowns, 911 receiving yards, playing in the shadow of arguably the best receiver going, I think, in Jamar Chase. And Higgins was incredible late in the year. Okay, so let's talk about it, because at first blush, you're like, nope, won't fit. Niners don't have any money. They can't, and if they do, they've got bigger needs. I've heard people say, no, they need to go sign Drew Dahlman. They need to go sign DJ Reed. They need to go sign DJ Jones. And people are looking at their needs in order, going, okay, the big needs are defensive tackle, definitely offensive tackle. And then, fill in the blank. It might be corner, it might be linebacker, it could be tight end, but O-line, D-line is at the top of the list. So most people hear that and go, no, not going to happen. I'm going to tell you why I think it makes a lot of sense. One, I think the 49ers would love to get the Purdy contract done soon. And if part of your deal is that you're going to take some of the remaining savings on your cap and turn it into T. Higgins, you have to be ready when free agency begins on March the 12th. So we're talking 2 weeks away. Is it possible that the Purdy contract gets done before March the 12th? The other thinking here is that if Brock Purdy's going to take less money, and Tim Kawakami had a report that the Niners and Purdy's camp are indicating there won't be fireworks on a way to an eventual deal. The framework may be a little different. And then he said, well, you never know how long the timeline, but it may take some time. But, think about it from Purdy's perspective. If I was Brock Purdy and the 49ers wanted me to take a little bit more of a team-friendly contract, I would want to know, what are you going to spend that money on? And if I was Brock Purdy, I would want it to be spent on something that makes me better. So you got an offensive lineman? Great. You got a tight end? Great. You got a wide receiver? T. Higgins? Great. So I think in a lot of ways, if Brock was going to play ball with them and give them a little bit of a deal, he probably would want that extra money being spent on somebody that's going to make him a better player. Now let's look at the 49ers. We'll share the screen here. We'll take a look at the 49ers depth chart. And if you take a quick perusal of the depth chart, first we'll start at wide receiver. It's a gigantic unknown. Everything's really unknown here. You don't know what you got at wide receiver. Why? Because Brandon Ayuk had a crushing knee injury. He's not going to be ready at the start of the year. He might not be ready till halfway through the year. He had a huge knee injury that, I don't know when he's coming back, and I don't know at what level he's going to return at. That was a major knee injury. I think it's naive to think that Ayuk's going to return and not be somewhat diminished. So you don't know what you're getting out of Ayuk. Deebo Samuel has put his Morgan Hill home on the market, and there's a lot of speculation that he could be a draft day or draft weekend trade to ease their cap burden. So he's not guaranteed to come back. And even if he is, he's coming off of the worst year of his career, and a lot of people feel at 29 that he's done. So what do you got in Ayuk? You don't know. What do you got in Debo? You don't know. Jawan Jennings has been a great story, but he's not a number one wide receiver. He was picked in the 7th round for a reason. Chris Conley's a free agent. Jacob Cowing did not establish himself as a receiver last year. Ricky Pearsall only established himself as a receiver, a good receiver in the last 2 or 3 games. So there's no way the 49ers are going to go into this year with Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, and that's it. And as I said, you don't know what you're getting out of Debo. You don't know what you're getting out of Ayuk, and Conley's a free agent. They did sign Isaiah Hodgins, who gives them another possession receiver with some good size, but they lack speed. They're not dynamic. And I don't see a dynamic receiver on their practice squad. I don't see a dynamic receiver on their roster. So from that standpoint, man, the receiver is a need, a major need, more so than you would think at first glance. Because at first glance, you're like, oh, well, they've got Ayuk and Debo, and they just drafted Pearsall, and they got JJ. So, they really don't have any room at wide receiver. Oh, but then when you go through it, you realize it's a house of cards. I mean, you don't know what you're getting out of Ayuk. You don't know what you're getting out of Debo. You're hoping on Pearsall. You're hoping on Cowing. I mean, you can't go into a season just on hope. So then you look at the offensive line. Now, I think they need a new center, but they have Jake Brendel under contract. They have Matt Hennessy, who they brought in at the end of the year they like. They have Nick Zakel. They have Drake Nugent. They have Colton McKivitz, who also has probably some ability to play some center. Dom Pooney can play all 5 spots. So, I mean, they really do have a number of different options that they can look at center. Even on the defensive line, which is the other thought, maybe they'll go defensive line. Well, they still have Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, Kalia Davis, Evan Anderson, and Kalia are those 4 guys under contract. So it's not like they're totally barren there. I would think D-line and O-line would take precedent. But then when you go and, if you look at the draft, this year's draft, or if you look at the free agent market, well, always take a look at the free agent market, first of all. If you look at the free agent market, it's not at wide receiver. It's not an incredible market. You've got Teteroa McMillan, but he's probably going in front of the Niners. You have Luther Burden III, who's really exciting, but he could be gone when the Niners pick at 11. You have Emeka Egbuka, Isaiah Bond. I really like Trey Harris. But after that, I mean, this is not like past wide receiver drafts where there's all kinds of guys. Savion Williams from TCU is pretty intriguing. He plays wildcat quarterback. He's 6'4", 225. He's a receiver. He's a runner. Ricky White from UNLV is interesting, but he's kind of slender at 6'1", 190. I mean, there's other guys here for sure. Arian Smith could run in sub 4.3 coming out of Georgia at the Combine. Nick Nash, very productive player, led the nation this year in touchdowns, but I was not that impressed by Nick Nash in the All-Star game. Now you're getting deep. Now you're getting like day 3 undrafted guys. And there's some interesting guys. Dante Thornton from Tennessee's intriguing. Samuel Brown from Miami's intriguing. I just watched this guy from Eastern Washington, Efton Chisholm III. Kind of a little bit of some Cooper Kupp vibes there. Kyle Williams from Wazoo's a pretty good player. But they're not starters. Rock Taylor, the Niners met with Rock Taylor, the wide receiver from Memphis, who's got good size, 6'3", 215 pounds, very, very polished receiver. And then when you look at the Senior Bowl and you look at the slot wide receiver, there's some slot wide receivers, Tez. But Tez is 5'9", 155 pounds. He looks awesome. Nobody can guard him, but he's also always going to be like one hit away from a season-ending injury. I mean, he's tiny. He's really, really, really tiny. There's Jalen Knoll from Iowa State, who's got some special teams ability. They met with him. He's an interesting name. Mario Williams, who started at USC, is now at Tulane. He's an interesting player, but it's not a stellar wide receiver, draft. So if the 49ers want to get an impactful wide receiver, they're probably going to have to do it in free agency. And it's, you look at the situation. I mean, as far as center goes, There's a lot of centers in this draft. I mean, there really are. Jake Majors from Texas is a really good center prospect. Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State. Jake Majors from Texas. Jared Wilson from Georgia. Cooper Mays from Tennessee. Drew Kendall from Boston College. Ja'Kai Clark from SMU is 6'3", 340. Gus Hartwig from Purdue is, I think, a pretty good center. And then there's guys that, aren't centers in college, but then could convert to center. Marcus Ware from Montana State. This guy, Gray Zabel, who had such a fantastic week from North Dakota State. He could be potentially a center. And there's a couple other guys as well that are on this list, but that could potentially be, centers. Willie Lampkin is one of my favorites. He's like 5'11", 285 from North Carolina. Sal Wormley from Clemson or from Penn State is a pretty good player with a wrestling background. I mean, so there's interesting players. Javontes Spraggins is a guard at Tennessee. Some people think he can play center. So I'm just saying it's a really deep draft for defensive tackles. They'll be able to find offensive linemen, even interior offensive linemen. But if they want to get a wide receiver that's going to be like their main guy, they're not going to find it in this draft. And then if we take a look at the free agents at wide receiver in this draft, it's not a great group. Let's take a look at the NFL free agents at wide receiver. These are unrestricted free agents at wide receiver across the league. And typically you're looking for a younger free agent if you can. So Stephon Diggs, best receiver, but he's 31. Higgins is young, which is why the Niners probably have interest. He's 26. He hasn't played 10 years in the league. He's played 5. But Keenan Allen is a top receiver. He's 33. Amari Cooper is on the wrong side of 30. Chris Godwin's not 30, but he's had a lot of injuries. Brandon Cooks, 31, going on 32. DeAndre Hopkins is going on 33. Mike Williams is going on 31. I mean, then it just drops off. Hollywood Brown, not very dependable. I mean, he can run, but he's not very dependable. There's some other guys down the list that I kind of like for the Niners, but they're not, Elijah Moore, 24-year-old guy, runs really fast. But can he start for you right away? I don't know. Rondale Moore coming off an injury. I like Rondale Moore. He can do some of the things Debo can do. But is he a starter for you right away? I don't know. I would say no. So, McCole Hardman can really run well. Tutu Atwell can really run well. But these guys aren't, number one type receivers like a T. Higgins. So I just think that in a lot of ways, I know the Niners are thinking offensive line, defensive line, and they're not necessarily thinking wide receiver. But if you look at it, man, if you're going to get an impactful wide receiver, it's probably going to have to be, a player in free agency, and Higgins is on the short list. And if I'm Brock Purdy, I would take less, but only if you're going to spend it on a big-time receiver that can make me a better quarterback. So maybe the Niners can get the Purdy deal done by March the 12th and give themselves maybe one significant free agent they could go get, and Higgins, I think, fits the bill. And then you can fill your needs on the D-line and the O-line and on defense and tight end, running back in the draft. Do that in the draft. But the receiver, if you're looking for a receiver in the draft, I think you're going to be disappointed. If you're looking for a receiver in free agency, there's some burners, but there's not that every down guy who's going to step in and be, a big-time impactful weapon. T. Higgins is that guy. And I think he makes a perfect sense for the 49ers. I know Drew Dahlman is very popular with 49er fans. I would love to see them, go get some help on defense, maybe at safety, definitely another corner with some speed. There's talk about Jamie Sherwood, the linebacker from the Jets, following Robert Saleh. All these guys make sense. But to me, the more I look at the Niners offseason and kind of back away and get more of a macro view of the total marketplace as far as the draft, what's available there, free agency, what's going to be available there, who's out there, what they have to spend, so on and so forth, I think T. Higgins makes perfect sense. If you add T. Higgins, he walks in day one as your number one receiver. You don't know what Ayuk's going to be when he comes back. You don't even know if Debo's going to be on the team. If you have T. Higgins, now you can let Cowing and Pearsall and whatever other receivers you add this offseason kind of come along at their own pace because you added a big-time guy in T. Higgins. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but when you look at the free agent market, when you look at the draft, and you look at the Niners' needs, I think T. Higgins to the 49ers in free agency makes a ton of sense. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Mancini's for sponsoring this video, and thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.